The black sedan pulled over to the side of Highway 64 as red and blue lights flashed in the rearview mirror. Marcus Whitfield, a prominent businessman and local political figure, glanced at his watch. He was already running late for the charity gala where he was scheduled to give the keynote speech. The irony wasn't lost on him that just this morning he had been quoted in the newspaper talking about law enforcement reforms. Officer Rebecca Martinez stepped out of her patrol car, adjusting her duty belt as she approached the vehicle. At 28, she had been with the state police for 6 years and had seen it all. What she hadn't expected was to recognize the driver as someone she'd seen on television just the night before, discussing his plans to run for governor. Marcus rolled down his window, his hands visible on the steering wheel. "Good evening, officer. Was I speeding?" Officer Martinez studied his license and registration. "Mr. Whitfield, you were doing 72 in a 55 zone. That's quite a bit over the limit." Her tone was professional but firm. "I apologize. Officer, I'm heading to a charity event and I'm running behind schedule. I know that's no excuse, but I wasn't paying attention to my speed." Marcus maintained eye contact, his voice calm and respectful. What happened next would be captured on the officer's body camera, though neither of them knew how significant that footage would become. Officer Martinez had dealt with plenty of politicians and wealthy individuals who thought their status put them above the law. She had developed a sixth sense about these encounters. "Mr. Whitfield, I'm going to need you to step out of the vehicle," she said, her hand moving instinctively toward her radio. Marcus felt his heart rate increase. "Is that really necessary, officer? I'm happy to accept the ticket and be on my way." "Sir, I detected an odor of alcohol coming from your vehicle. For everyone's safety, I need you to step out." Her voice carried the authority of someone who had made this request many times before. As Marcus slowly opened his door, he could see other vehicles slowing down on the highway, their occupants craning their necks to see what was happening. In the distance, he noticed someone holding up a phone, likely recording the entire interaction. His political career, which had been gaining momentum over the past year, suddenly felt very fragile. The evening air was crisp as he stood beside his car, facing Officer Martinez. She was shorter than him, but carried herself with confidence. "Have you been drinking tonight, Mr. Whitfield?" "I had 1 glass of wine with dinner about 3 hours ago," Marcus replied honestly. "Nothing more than that." Officer Martinez nodded, making notes on her pad. "I'm going to conduct a field sobriety test. This is standard procedure when alcohol is suspected." Marcus looked around at the growing number of onlookers. Cars were now pulling over completely, and he could see people getting out with their phones. Tomorrow's headlines were already forming in his mind, and none of them were good. "Officer, I understand you're doing your job, but is there any way we can handle this more discreetly? I'm not asking for special treatment, but there are people recording this." Officer Martinez followed his gaze to the crowd that was forming. "Mr. Whitfield, the law applies to everyone equally. Your public status doesn't change the procedure I need to follow." As she prepared to begin the sobriety test, neither Marcus nor Officer Martinez realized they were about to become part of a story that would dominate local news for weeks. The businessman who had built his political platform on transparency and accountability was about to face the ultimate test of those principles. The crowd continued to grow, and somewhere in that group of onlookers was Sarah Chen, a freelance journalist who happened to be driving home from covering a city council meeting. She recognized Marcus immediately and knew she was witnessing something significant. Her finger hovered over the record button on her phone, ready to document whatever happened next. Marcus took a deep breath, knowing that his response to this situation would define not just his evening, but potentially his entire future. The charity gala would have to wait. Right now, on the side of a busy highway, his character was about to be tested in ways he never anticipated. Officer Martinez positioned herself a safe distance from Marcus as she explained the field sobriety test procedures. The growing crowd of spectators created an unusual atmosphere for what should have been a routine traffic stop. Phone cameras were now openly recording from multiple angles, turning the highway's shoulder into an impromptu stage. "I need you to walk in a straight line, heel to toe, for 9 steps, turn around, and walk back," Officer Martinez instructed, demonstrating the movement. "Keep your arms at your sides and count each step out loud." Marcus nodded, trying to block out the whispers and comments from the crowd. He had participated in charity walks and community events countless times, but never had walking felt so important. As he took his first step, he could hear someone in the crowd shout, "That's Marcus Whitfield, the guy running for governor!" The businessman completed the walk flawlessly, his years of morning jogs paying off. Officer Martinez watched carefully, noting his steady gait and clear speech. "Now I need you to stand on one foot while I count. To 30, she said. As Marcus lifted his right foot, a voice from the crowd called out, "Hey, officer, why don't you go catch some real criminals instead of harassing good people?" The comment drew murmurs of agreement from some spectators, but also sparked arguments with others who believed no one should be above the law. Officer Martinez felt the pressure of the situation, but remained focused on her duties. She had dealt with hostile crowds before, but this felt different. Every move she made was being recorded and would likely be scrutinized by her superiors, the media, and the public. Marcus maintained his balance perfectly, counting each second aloud. Despite the chaos around him, he found himself oddly calm. Perhaps it was his business training kicking in, or maybe it was the realization that this moment would define how people saw him as a leader. "Thank you, Mr. Whitfield. Now I need you to follow my finger with your eyes without moving your head," Officer Martinez said, producing a small flashlight. As she moved it back and forth, she watched for any signs of impairment. During this test, a new voice emerged from the crowd. "Officer Martinez!" It was Tom Bradley, a local news anchor who had been driving home from the station. "Can you tell us what's happening here?" Without breaking her concentration, Officer Martinez replied firmly, "Sir, please stay back. This is an active investigation." Marcus's eyes tracked the light smoothly, and Officer Martinez could see no signs of alcohol impairment. Her instincts, as an experienced officer, were telling her that this man had likely been telling the truth about only having 1 drink hours earlier. "Mr. Whitfield," she said quietly, stepping closer so the crowd couldn't hear, "I'm going to be honest with you. You're passing these tests, and I don't believe you're intoxicated. However, you were significantly over the speed limit." Marcus felt a wave of relief wash over him. "Thank you, officer. I appreciate your professionalism during all of this." He gestured toward the crowd. "Here's what's going to happen," Officer Martinez continued. "I'm going to write you a citation for speeding. You can pay it or contest it in court. That's your right." As she walked back to her patrol car to write the ticket, the crowd's attention shifted. Someone shouted, "What's happening? Are you arresting him?" Marcus seized the moment. Instead of getting back in his car, he walked toward the crowd, his hands visible and his posture open. "Excuse me, everyone. I know you're curious about what's happening here." Sarah Chen, the journalist, pushed closer with her recording phone. This was turning into something much bigger than a simple traffic stop. "I was pulled over for speeding," Marcus announced to the crowd. "Officer Martinez is doing her job professionally and fairly. I broke the law by driving too fast, and I'm going to face the consequences just like any other citizen would." The crowd fell silent, surprised by his directness. Some had expected denial or excuses, others had hoped for drama. Instead, they were witnessing something unusual in modern politics: accountability. Tom Bradley stepped forward with his microphone. "Mr. Whitfield, some people might see this as bad publicity for your gubernatorial campaign. How do you respond to that?" Marcus looked directly into the camera. "Tom, I think this is exactly the kind of moment that shows people who I really am. I made a mistake, I got caught, and I'm taking responsibility. That's what leadership looks like." Officer Martinez returned with the citation, observing the impromptu press conference happening near her patrol car. She had to admit she was impressed by how the situation was being handled. Officer Martinez approached the crowd where Marcus was still answering questions from Tom Bradley and other onlookers. She held the citation in her hand, but something about the situation made her pause. In her 6 years of law enforcement, she had never seen a traffic stop turn into a public forum on accountability and leadership. "Mr. Whitfield," she called out, causing the crowd to turn toward her. "I have your citation ready." As Marcus walked back toward her, an elderly woman in the crowd stepped forward. "Officer, excuse me, but I saw the whole thing. This man wasn't driving recklessly. He was just going with the flow of traffic. Everyone speeds on this stretch of road." Other voices joined in. "She's right," called out a middle-aged man. "I drive this route every day, and the speed limit is too low for this section." Officer Martinez found herself in an unusual position. The crowd wasn't hostile toward her, but they were questioning the fairness of the citation. She looked at Marcus, who seemed as surprised as she was by the turn of events. "I appreciate everyone's input," Officer Martinez said diplomatically, "but the speed limit is clearly posted, and Mr. Whitfield was exceeding it significantly." Sarah Chen had been recording everything and noticed something interesting. She checked her phone's GPS and cross-referenced it with the traffic data. "Officer Martinez, I'm a journalist, and I've been looking at the traffic patterns here. The average speed on this stretch of highway during evening hours is actually 68 miles per hour, according to state transportation data." This revelation created a stir in the crowd. Marcus looked confused. "I'm sorry, what does that mean exactly?" Sarah held up her phone, showing the data. "It means that driving 55 here is actually more dangerous than driving 70 because you're significantly slower than the flow of traffic. The state's own studies show this." Officer Martinez felt a knot forming in her stomach. She had been patrolling this area for 2 years and had written dozens of speeding tickets. She had never questioned whether the speed limit was appropriate. For the road conditions, Tom Bradley sensed a larger story developing. "Officer Martinez, how do you respond to this information?" "I enforce the posted speed limits," she replied carefully. "That's my job." Marcus stepped forward, seeing an opportunity to demonstrate leadership. "Wait a minute. If what Ms. Chen is saying is accurate, then we have a bigger problem here than just my speeding ticket." He turned to address the crowd. "This isn't about getting out of a ticket. This is about public safety and fair law enforcement. If the speed limit on this road is genuinely unsafe because it's too low, then that's something we need to address." Officer Martinez watched this unfold with growing interest. She had always prided herself on being a fair officer, but she had never considered that some of the laws she enforced might be flawed. An unexpected voice joined the conversation. "He's absolutely right." Everyone turned to see Captain David Ross, Officer Martinez's supervisor, walking toward the group. He had been monitoring the situation on the radio and decided to check on his officer. "Captain?" Officer Martinez was surprised to see him. Captain Ross addressed the crowd. "I've been listening to this conversation, and Mr. Whitfield raises a valid point. We've had 17 accidents on this stretch of road in the past year, and most of them involved speed differentials, not excessive speed." Marcus felt a moment of vindication, but more importantly, he saw an opportunity for real change. "Captain Ross, what would it take to get the speed limit on this section reviewed?" "That would require a traffic study by the Department of Transportation, followed by a review process that could take months," Captain Ross explained. Sarah Chen stepped forward again. "What if we could expedite that process? I've been investigating traffic safety issues for a series of articles I'm writing. I have contacts at the DOT who might be interested in this case." The crowd had grown larger, and people were now discussing the broader implications of what they were witnessing. This had evolved from a simple traffic stop into a community discussion about law enforcement, public safety, and civic engagement. Officer Martinez found herself at the center of something unprecedented. "Sir," she said to Marcus, "I still need to give you this citation. That's protocol." "Of course," Marcus replied, accepting the ticket. "And I'll pay it, but let's also work together to make sure this doesn't happen to other law-abiding citizens, Captain." Ross looked impressed. "Mr. Whitfield, are you suggesting some kind of community initiative?" "I'm suggesting we use this moment as an opportunity to improve things for everyone," Marcus answered. Officer Martinez was doing her job professionally. The problem isn't with law enforcement. It's with a system that puts officers in the position of enforcing potentially flawed regulations. The crowd began to applaud, and Officer Martinez felt something she had never experienced before during a traffic stop. Hope that real change might come from this encounter. What happened next surprised everyone, including Marcus himself. Instead of simply accepting the citation and leaving, he pulled out his phone and made a call right there on the highway shoulder. "Hello, Janet. It's Marcus. I know I'm supposed to be at the gala in 20 minutes, but something more important has come up." He paused, listening to his campaign manager's response. "No, I'm not in jail. Actually, I'm in the middle of what might be the most important moment of my campaign." The crowd watched with fascination as Marcus explained the situation to his team. Officer Martinez and Captain Ross exchanged glances, both curious about where this was heading. After ending the call, Marcus addressed the group. "I just canceled my appearance at tonight's fundraising gala. The 200 people expecting to hear me speak about transparent government and community engagement are going to have to wait." Tom Bradley raised his microphone. "Why would you cancel such an important campaign event?" "Because this," Marcus gestured to the crowd around them, "this is real community engagement. This is where actual change happens, not in fancy hotel ballrooms." Sarah Chen had been taking notes frantically. "Mr. Whitfield, what exactly are you proposing?" Marcus looked at Officer Martinez and Captain Ross. "With your permission, I'd like to propose something unprecedented. What if we use this situation to create a model for how communities and law enforcement can work together to identify and fix systemic problems?" Captain Ross crossed his arms, intrigued but cautious. "What did you have in mind?" "A task force," Marcus replied. "Citizens, law enforcement, traffic engineers, local government officials. We identify problems like this speed limit issue and fix them together, transparently." Officer Martinez found herself speaking up. "Captain, we get complaints about this. Stretch of road all the time. People saying the speed limit doesn't make sense. I've always just told them to contact the city council." "And how often does that actually result in change?" asked Sarah Chen. "Honestly, never," admitted Captain Ross. "The bureaucratic process is so slow that most issues just get forgotten." A woman in the crowd stepped forward. She appeared to be in her 40s, wearing scrubs. "I'm Dr. Lisa Park. I work at the emergency room at County General. We see accidents from this road regularly, and Officer Martinez is right. Most of them are rear-end collisions from speed differences, not from people driving too fast." This expert testimony added weight to the discussion. Marcus seized the moment. "Dr. Park, would you be willing to serve on this task force, provide medical data about traffic accidents?" "Absolutely," she replied without hesitation. Tom Bradley was documenting everything. "This is remarkable. A traffic stop has turned into the formation of a community safety initiative." Captain Ross pulled Officer Martinez aside for a quiet conversation. "Rebecca, what's your honest assessment of this situation?" Officer Martinez thought for a moment. "Captain, I've been doing this job for 6 years, and I've never seen anything like this. Usually when I pull someone over, they either get angry and argumentative, or they try to talk their way out of it. This man took responsibility immediately, but then he turned it into something constructive." "Do you think he's just being political?" Captain Ross asked. "Maybe. But if he is, it's the kind of politics we need more of," she replied. "He's not asking to get out of the ticket. He's asking to fix the problem that created the situation in the first place. Meanwhile, Marcus was exchanging contact information with several people in the crowd. Sarah Chen approached him with a serious expression. "Mr. Whitfield, I have to ask, is this all genuine, or is this damage control for your campaign?" Marcus paused, considering the question carefully. "Ms. Chen, 3 hours ago, if someone had told me I'd be standing on the side of a highway forming a community task force instead of giving a speech to major donors, I would have thought they were crazy." He looked around at the faces surrounding him. "But you know what? This feels more important than any campaign event I've ever attended. These are real people dealing with real problems that affect their daily lives." Dr. Park nodded approvingly. "That's exactly the kind of leadership we need." Officer Martinez rejoined the group. "Mr. Whitfield, I have to ask, what happens if this task force identifies problems that are expensive to fix? Will you still be supportive when it requires real resources and political capital?" "Officer Martinez, that's the whole point," Marcus replied. "Anyone can support easy solutions. Real leadership means tackling the hard problems, even when it's difficult or costly." Captain Ross stepped forward. "All right, I'm interested. But this needs to be official. We can't just have informal meetings and expect real change." "Agreed," said Marcus. "I'll contact the mayor's office tomorrow and propose this as an official city initiative. We'll need proper channels and accountability." As the impromptu meeting continued, none of them realized that the video Sarah Chen had been recording was already going viral on social media, with thousands of people sharing it with comments like, "This is what real leadership looks like," and "Finally, a politician who actually listens." By the time the impromptu highway meeting ended, it was nearly 10 o'clock. The charity gala had concluded without Marcus, but the story of what happened on Highway 64 was just beginning. Sarah Chen had uploaded her video to multiple social media platforms, and by morning, it had been viewed over 50,000 times. Marcus arrived at his campaign office the next day to find his staff in crisis mode. His campaign manager, Janet Sullivan, met him at the door with a laptop and a very serious expression. "Marcus, we need to talk," she said, ushering him into his private office. "The video is everywhere. Local news, state news, and it's starting to get national attention." Marcus sat down and watched the video for the first time. Seeing himself on the screen, interacting with Officer Martinez and the crowd, felt surreal. "What's the reaction been?" "Mixed, but trending positive," Janet replied, scrolling through comments and news articles. "Most people are calling it refreshing and authentic, but some of your opponents are saying it was a publicity stunt." "A publicity stunt that involved me getting a speeding ticket and canceling a major fundraiser?" Marcus asked with a wry smile. "That's actually what's making people believe it was genuine," Janet admitted. "Politicians usually don't create negative publicity for themselves on purpose." Meanwhile, across town, Officer Martinez was having her own challenging morning. She had been called into Captain Ross's office first thing, expecting some kind of reprimand for the unusual situation. "Rebecca, I've been fielding calls all morning," Captain Ross said. "The mayor's office, the police chief, local news stations, and about a dozen citizens who saw the video." Officer Martinez felt her stomach drop. "Am I in trouble, sir?" "Quite the opposite," Captain Ross replied with a smile. "Everyone is praising your professionalism and the way you handled the situation. The police chief wants to use your interaction as a training example for community policing." Relief washed over her face. "Really?" "Really, and there's more. The mayor wants to meet with you, Mr. Whitfield, and me this afternoon to discuss this task force idea officially." At the same time, Dr. Lisa Park was discovering that her brief appearance in the video had made her something of a local celebrity. Colleagues at the hospital were stopping her in the hallways to discuss traffic safety, and she had received several calls from reporters wanting to interview her about accident data. Sarah Chen, meanwhile, was experiencing the biggest break of her freelance career. News outlets were reaching out to license her video, and she had been offered assignments to follow up on the story. By noon, Marcus's office had received over 300 calls from citizens wanting to join the proposed task force or share their own experiences with problematic traffic situations throughout the city. "This is incredible," said David Martinez, Marcus's policy advisor, as he reviewed the calls. "We have traffic engineers, accident attorneys, emergency responders, and dozens of regular citizens all wanting to participate." "Have you heard from Officer Martinez or Captain Ross about the meeting with the mayor?" Marcus asked. "Yes, it's confirmed for 3 o'clock at City Hall," David replied. "And Marcus, there's something else. Channel 7 wants to do a live interview with you and Officer Martinez together this evening." Marcus considered this carefully. "Only if Officer Martinez agrees and feels comfortable with it." She didn't ask to become part of a news story. At 2:45 p.m., Marcus arrived at City Hall to find a small crowd of reporters and citizens gathered outside. Officer Martinez was already there, looking professional but clearly nervous about the media attention. "Officer Martinez," Marcus approached her with an extended hand. "Thank you for agreeing to this meeting. How are you handling all the attention?" "Honestly, Mr. Whitfield, it's overwhelming," she replied. "I joined the police force to help people, not to be on television." "Well, you've definitely helped people," Marcus assured her. "The response has been incredible." Mayor Patricia Chen, no relation to Sarah Chen, greeted them both warmly. "This is exactly the kind of initiative our city needs," she said as they entered the conference room where Captain Ross was already waiting. "Let's get right to the point," Mayor Chen continued. "The traffic issue you identified yesterday is just one of dozens of similar problems throughout our city. Mr. Whitfield, are you prepared to make this a real priority if we move forward?" "Absolutely," Marcus replied. "But I want to be clear. This isn't about my campaign. This needs to happen regardless of whether I win any election. The citizens deserve better." Captain Ross leaned forward. "We've done some preliminary research since yesterday. There are at least 12 road segments in the city with similar issues, 3 school zones with confusing signage, and 2 traffic light patterns that create more problems than they solve," Officer Martinez added. "And those are just the ones we know about. I'm sure there are more." Mayor Chen nodded thoughtfully. "The question is resources. A comprehensive traffic safety review would cost the city significant money and time." "What if we made it a public-private partnership?" Marcus suggested. "My company could contribute resources, and I'm confident other local businesses would participate if they saw the value." "That's generous, but it raises ethical questions about private influence on public safety decisions," the mayor replied. Officer Martinez, who had been quiet, suddenly spoke up. "What if the task force was completely transparent? Public meetings, published data, citizens involved in every decision?" Everyone turned to look at her, impressed by her insight. Captain Ross smiled proudly at his officer's contribution. "That's brilliant," said Mayor Chen. "Complete transparency would address the ethical concerns and ensure community buy-in." As the meeting continued, none of them realized that outside City Hall, Sarah Chen was interviewing citizens who had gathered to show support for the initiative, and that this story was about to take another unexpected turn. 6 months later, the scene on Highway 64 looked dramatically different. A new speed limit sign read 65 mph instead of the old 55 mph, and accident rates had dropped by 40%. But the changes went far beyond just one stretch of road. The CI Community Safety Task Force, officially established 3 weeks after that fateful traffic stop, had become a model that other cities were studying and implementing. The task force met every 2 weeks in the community center, with meetings live-streamed online for transparency. Officer Rebecca Martinez had been promoted to Community Liaison Officer, a new position created specifically to bridge the gap between law enforcement and citizens. She now spent half her time on patrol and half working with community groups to identify and solve problems before they became larger issues. "It's the most rewarding work I've ever done," she told Tom Bradley during a follow-up interview. "Instead of just writing tickets and responding to problems, we're preventing them." The task force had identified and fixed 17 traffic safety issues throughout the city. More importantly, it had created a new model for how communities could work together to solve problems. Citizens felt heard, officials felt supported, and everyone was working toward common goals. Marcus Whitfield's gubernatorial campaign had been transformed by the Highway 64 incident. Instead of traditional campaign events in hotel ballrooms, he now held town halls in community centers, focusing on practical problem-solving rather than political rhetoric. "That traffic stop was the best thing that ever happened to my campaign," Marcus reflected during a campaign strategy meeting. "It showed me what real leadership looks like." The polls reflected this new approach. Marcus had gone from being a relatively unknown businessman to leading in the gubernatorial race. But more importantly to him, the Community Safety Task Force model was being adopted in 12 other cities across the state. Dr. Lisa Park had become the task force's medical advisor, providing data and insights that helped prioritize which problems to tackle first. Her emergency room had seen a noticeable decrease in traffic-related injuries as the improvements were implemented. Sarah Chen had parlayed her viral video into a full-time position with the state's largest newspaper, covering community innovation stories. She had won a state journalism award for her series on the Community Safety Task Force. "The most surprising thing," Sarah wrote in her award-winning article, "was how a simple traffic stop became a catalyst for reimagining how democracy could work at the local level." Captain David Ross had been promoted to deputy chief, partly based on his department's innovative community engagement approach. The police department's community approval ratings had increased significantly, and officer morale was at an all-time high. "When officers feel like they're part of the solution instead of just enforcers, it changes everything," Captain Ross explained to a delegation of law enforcement officials visiting from other states. But perhaps the most significant change was in how citizens viewed their relationship with local government. The success of the Community Safety Task Force had inspired similar groups focused on education, economic development, and environmental issues. Mayor Patricia Chen announced at the 6-month anniversary celebration that citizen participation in city government had increased by 300% since the task force began. What started as one man taking responsibility for a speeding ticket has transformed into a new model for civic engagement, the mayor said to applause from the packed community center. Marcus, now comfortably ahead in the polls, addressed the crowd. "6 months ago, I was rushing to a fancy fundraiser focused on raising money and giving speeches. Officer Martinez's traffic stop forced me to slow down and actually listen to people." He paused, looking at Officer Martinez, who was sitting in the front row in her dress uniform. "Sometimes the most important moments in our lives come from the most unexpected places. That traffic stop taught me that real leadership isn't about having all the answers. It's about bringing people together to find solutions." Officer Martinez stood and addressed the crowd. "When I pulled Mr. Whitfield over that night, I was just doing my job. I never imagined it would lead to all of this. But it's taught me that every interaction we have with citizens is an opportunity to build trust and create positive change." The celebration continued late into the evening, with citizens sharing stories about how the task force approach had improved their neighborhoods and their relationship with local government. As the event wound down, Marcus found himself standing outside the community center with Officer Martinez, looking at the busy street where cars were now safely traveling at appropriate speeds. "Officer Martinez, I have a confession," Marcus said with a smile. "I still haven't paid that speeding ticket," she laughed. "Mr. Whitfield, that ticket was dismissed when the speed limit was changed. Turns out you were right about the safety issue." "Well then," Marcus replied, "I guess we both learned something that night about justice and doing the right thing." As they shook hands and parted ways, neither of them could have predicted that their chance encounter would be studied in political science and public administration classes for years to come. cited as an example of how authentic leadership and community engagement could transform both individuals and entire communities. The story of the Highway 64 traffic stop had become more than just a viral video or a campaign moment. It had become proof that democracy works best when citizens, officials, and law enforcement work together with mutual respect and common purpose.